Welcome back to the Joust About Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Bratt, and I'm a career advisor and English teacher at Buren High School. I've seen too many people spend a lot of time and money working toward careers they don't enjoy or don't help them achieve the purposes they have identified for their lives. I want to make sure that doesn't happen to anyone else. Today's episode features the 10-minute highlights of my interview with Nicholas DeBouver, an associate scientist of structural biology at UCB, a multinational biopharmaceutical company. The highlights include what Nicholas does as a scientist, the role co-ops have played in his career journey, how he deals with failure and rejection, advice he has for current students, and much more. If these highlights make you want to learn more about Nicholas's career journey, check out the full interview and enjoy the show.
As you mentioned, I work at a pharmaceutical company called UCB, and I work in their structural biology department. And within structural biology, within that container, there's something called crystallography, which is the area that I specialize in. And additionally, I have a lot of interest and passion in developing computational and data science tools, like using machine learning and artificial intelligence to kind of aid in the process that leads to creating crystals that we use to study the protein matter that we're interested in looking at. And I also work as a collaborator with a consortium called the Seattle Structural Genomics Center for Infectious Disease. And the purpose of that consortium is to generate models of high interest proteins that are associated with organisms that are known to cause different sorts of infections, like fungal infections, bacterial infections, viral infections. And so the one most on the top of everyone's mind these days is coronavirus, which is something that we as a group have worked on. Currently, I only go into the office maybe 3 days a week, and that's because there is lab work to do. And yeah, it just depends on the week. Some weeks I might spend like 80% of my time in the lab. Some weeks it might only be 20. It just depends on what our priorities are and what we're working on at the moment. A lot of the time I'm working on computational work, which wouldn't require me to be in a lab, and there are a lot of meetings. Like I was in a meeting for an hour and a half this morning, right before this. After my sophomore year of college, I was offered a co-op opportunity over the summer, working for a consulting company. And at the end of that co-op, they offered me a full-time job. And so I decided to leave school full-time and do that instead. And I still took like 1 or 2 classes a semester, but at that point, I already had the job. And so it was just like, eventually I'll complete my degree. And working there, because it was consulting, I got to work with a lot of different clients that worked in a lot of different sectors, everything from banking to education to manufacturing to pharmaceutical sciences, etc. Like a lot of exposure to a lot of fields. And I felt I was the most excited when I worked with clients that were in the field of chemistry or biochemistry. And so when I eventually decided, hey, I should probably finish my college degree, I went back full time, and I'm like, well, I already have all this like computer science knowledge. Like, what's the point of getting a degree in that? So I was like, okay, we'll do biochemistry. And so I spent 2 years finishing that degree. They always talk about like it's about who you know, and it's a little bit of a cliche, but it's also kind of true. So when I was finishing up my undergrad, I did undergraduate research, and when I was applying for jobs for after graduation, one of the companies that I applied to, the CEO was pretty good friends with the person I was doing undergraduate research with, and that led to a job at a company called Anatrace, and where they make crystallography related reagents. And from there, I was able to secure a job back at the university doing crystallography research full time, and having that association with Anatrace definitely helped secure that, along with having some computer science background. So knowing how to script, write code, process data, etc. And I saw a job opening in a crystallography lab here in Seattle. So I was like, oh, I might as well apply. And there, working for Anatrace, they're like, oh, hey, you work for Anatrace. Do you know this person, this person? I was like, yeah, I know those people. And also one of the people I interviewed with when they were doing their PhD, my undergraduate research advisor was taking a sabbatical in that lab to learn structural biology. So there was, when I had him as one of my references, it was like, oh, hey, I know that guy and I trust his opinion on people. So like it's important to build those relationships when you are in college, because you're going to probably rely on those letters of reference for a long time. So don't be another face in the crowd. In research in particular, you kind of get conditioned to be okay, first of all, with failure, because you have to try a lot of things, and almost 90 to 99% of the things you try are not going to succeed. And so you kind of get conditioned to failure. And I think you kind of have to do the same thing with being okay with maybe asking a question you might perceive as being a little bit, I don't know, dumb. There's definitely no such thing as a dumb question, because it could be a basis for a good idea, and sometimes it might be a little too outlandish. Because like in the position I have now, we kind of have to think about reproducibility and scalability of a lot of things we do. And so sometimes I might come up with an idea that might work, but not something that would be easily scalable. And in those cases, I generally get told, the big NO. I think one thing that's kind of important to do, and honestly, I wish I would have done a better job of this, is like when you're like taking classes in high school, they might not be super in depth about like particular subject areas, but it does give you a good idea of like the kind of things that are out there, and just being very mindful and intentional about the things that you're learning about and reading about, and paying attention to what excites you and what doesn't. Because you might have it in your head that, oh man, someday I want to do this, but you weren't paying attention to how that actually affected you when you were learning it, and it might not quite turn out the way that you were hoping. But even if you get into college and that happens, like it is 100% okay to change degrees. Most people do at some point.
Thank you for watching the highlights of this episode of the Joust About Careers podcast. I hope you learned valuable information from this career story, and to be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you, and as always, share this episode if it could help someone you know. Have a great week.